Trump came out last night and denounced the film and called us all human scum. If he was so triggered by the film or finds something in the film that is motivating that response and him wanting to shut it down, I just think it makes it more essential for people to see it.
In The Apprentice, we see a different side to Donald J. Trump. Before his entry into politics, and before he became a property tycoon with his name on skyscrapers from Manhattan to Mumbai, Trump was an arrogant, bumptious young heir on the make.
I got flair and I'm smart, so I think that's going to make me successful. But I also want to stay humble.
He was vulnerable, needy, and voraciously ambitious. And we see him prowling around the cocktail lounges of Manhattan, hunting for an angle. And that's where he's spotted by one Roy Cohn, a combative, nefarious, and supremely well-connected attorney.
Now, the government has failed to spell out one single fact concerning alleged discriminatory practices against blacks by the Trumps.
And the friendship between the two, as Cohn molds Trump and helps build his brand from the base up,
if you look like $1 million, I look like $1 million.
Forms the core of this film, which seeks to answer some of the key questions about the man who would be world king once more. How did Donald Trump become who he is today? And what drives his insatiable appetite for wealth and power? I spoke to Succession star Jeremy Strong, who plays Roy Cohn, and Sebastian Stan, who plays an extraordinarily lifelike Donald Trump, to ask them what they learned along the way. There are some big moments, Jeremy, in the film that will make headlines, and some of the things that are shown, which Trump maybe might dispute, but as you say, are on the record.
Has disputed.
Yeah. The ones that jumped out to me were he takes all the diet pills, or he thinks they're diet pills, but they're actually amphetamines. He has part of his scalp sort of restructured to prevent balding. There's a marital rape scene, which was part of his divorce from Ivana Trump. It was raised in that divorce, has subsequently been denied.
It was put into the record under
under subpoena. Yeah.
Roy is someone who was deceitful and was a dissimulator, and he taught Donald to do that as well.
Mr. Cohn.
How can he say for sure
Mr.
they were
Cohn,
Caucasian?
Please allow Agent Green to answer the question.
I've seen Puerto Ricans whiter than my tush after a long winter.
All of the things that you referenced are all based on historical record. Gabe Sherman, who wrote the script, is a journalist. And, you know, the commitment to historical veracity was paramount in the making of this thing. So I think we all stand on that. It's not a pack of lies. Trump came out last night and denounced the film and called us all human scum, which is, to me, a really upsetting phrase, because it's a phrase that was used by Hitler and Stalin and Kim Jong and Bolsonaro, and he's not using it accidentally. That language is incredibly troubling to me. But if anything, if he was so triggered by the film or finds something in the film that is, motivating that response and him wanting to shut it down, I just think it makes it more essential for people to see it because of what it has to offer us before we cast a ballot.
But it's obviously also coming out weeks before the election. Was that timing conscious? And that obviously heightens the emotions around it because of what's coming in a couple of weeks.
I mean, it's not conscious at all, in the sense, like, about 2.5 to 3 months ago, we still couldn't get anybody to release this.
Right.
The movie maybe wasn't even going to come out. So it feels fortuitous and sort of meant to be, and it is charged because of that. We're just simply trying to do, to take the road less traveled, which is to get people to confront certain biases and certain discomforts and truly ask themselves whether they actually trust this person or not. And that is the right we all have. But you have to look at something when you're saying, how dare we humanize him, or how could he be, three-dimensional in any way, shape, or form, any of these people? Well, then you have to ask yourself, why is it that half of the country loves him so much? Because he's showing very clearly who he is. And there's a choice being made there, conscious or not, to deny certain things and to just invent certain things as well. And it's that lack of care for the truth that is so dangerous.
Sebastian, you touched on this a little bit earlier on, this idea of what drives Trump, what motivates him, has always been a source of fascination. I've heard him compared to Iago as someone whose motives can be difficult to even understand. How controversial do you think these issues will be when the film comes out?
You know what's interesting I find, being with this movie the last few months and sort of watching all of the controversy arise, that the thing that people find most controversial is the humanizing of these two men, and is the sort of shock to see moments of tenderness or softness, as you say, in Donald Trump. That seems to be very troubling for people. It seems to be troubling that this is an attempt to humanize, and rather than simply demonize or vilify him and Roy. And Roy was someone, for all of his, and he caused tremendous harm in his life, and I think his influence is destructive to this day. He was also a person who had a good amount of tenderness. So again, it's like, we shouldn't be shocked that people contain polarities and contradictions and different elements, but we live in this time that has become so binary that it's hard for us to encompass those things within the same person.
What do you think is the engine of Donald Trump's hunger?
I feel this need, this hungry, desperate need, paranoid need for power that overshadows everything else, to me only spells out somebody who at some point, and to some extent arguably still today, must have felt so powerless and so victimized and traumatized in some regard that they have made this allegiance to this ideology and this sort of way of thinking that nobody ever again will have more power than me, ever again. I will never be, at the hands of anyone. Absolute power corrupts absolutely, right? This is to me one thing that we're seeing.
Sorry, Roy.
No, I mean, listen,
Caught
it's
me
your
off
life. You got a ways to go, but you're learning.
Do you think if Cohn hadn't been there, Trump, we just wouldn't have emerged as the kind of character he did?
I do, yeah. I
Do
do
you think he was that instrumental?
I almost dare say I know he was that instrumental. Yeah. Roy Cohn's legacy is really a legacy of denialism. He's like the progenitor of alternative facts. Like, you look at Trump, you look at Roger Stone, you look at Alex Jones, that sort of began with Roy in a sense, where truth with a capital T, truth social, truth is a malleable thing. It's whatever you want it to be if you say it loudly enough and often enough. And it turns out that a lot of people accept that. And I think it just so happened that these two outsiders from the outer boroughs, who were both sort of these strivers who had a great need for power. When I worked on Succession, I read something that Jung wrote, that where love is absent, power fills the vacuum. He is instrumental in making Trump who he is now today.
Last question for you, Sebastian. Is there anything you admire about Donald Trump? Is there anything you learned that you came to admire about him through this film?
The concept of loyalty comes to mind, right? Loyalty. But I can't really even fully say that, because it is selective loyalty. It's a convenient loyalty from what I see, in terms of how it helps him. This is why I actually think he's much smarter than people like to admit or want to point out. Because I do feel a lot of this is conscious. I think he's created himself to be a brand, also as a way to create distance from the rest of us mere humans here on the rest of the planet, And as a result, I think people exalt him, don't try to understand or try to see him from our level, And I think that's one of the things the movie, I think, tries to do, is humanize, but in humanizing also really point out the flaws that human beings have. Human beings have flaws. And I think when you're looking at a person that you're about to trust to lead the free world, you should really understand his flaws and understand where his decisions come from.
So is it fair to say you'll both be voting for Kamala Harris in November?
Yeah, but I don't agree with anything either of these people espouse or value or believe. But I also think I don't find any value in me, some actor, saying I admire or don't admire, passing judgment on them. I don't know how that adds anything good to the scrum that we're all in, which is just people name calling and judging and otherizing we're speaking to it through this piece of work, and we both put a lot of passion into it. And I think that the work speaks to all these questions.
Brilliant, guys. Well, it was a great pleasure to meet you. Thank you very much. Take care.